Well, I think the fact that we're all very good friends and grew up in the same area has a lot to do with that. And I think we got lucky when we met each other that everyone had very similar goals in mind. And we've been fortunate that everyone has really pushed themselves as musicians and made a real attempt at, just bettering themselves. And it's something that, we've always tried to work on, pushing our musicianship and trying to expand the boundaries of the band, so I don't know. Call it fate. I don't know what it was, but the five of us are still together and enjoying it.
Because you said you were friends. I mean, quite often, most bands start off as friends, but the tensions of being thrust together for months on end kind of build up.
Well, I think that you just have to understand each other when it comes to that. There are stressful times and there are moments of debate and so forth. But I think that's very healthy. I think that is sort of spawns creativity for us. I think that sometimes if we all had the exact same mind, it wouldn't provide for much variety in the band. So, we sort of, can appreciate the differences. But fortunately, when it comes to business decisions or kind of where we want to take the band creatively, we have a common sort of focus on that. And, if someone's having a bad day, we just, you just accept that. Not everybody can, be in the ultimate frame of mind all the time. It's just very hard to do that. So, I don't know, we just managed to keep it together without really any problems. I think the fact that our career is constantly expanding is a source of great excitement for all of us. And I think our music that we're writing now has grown so much and evolved so much from when we very first started. It's just very exciting, to be a part of. It's very exciting to see what we're capable of now. It was probably we couldn't have plotted our course, years ago where it would have gone, but you just have to believe in your team.
Right.
And not have attitudes. That's the big thing in there. Sometimes people change over a course of time, but I think, we've been very fortunate that everyone has maintained their heads together.
No particular member started believing their publicity handouts?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so are you still based in Seattle?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, what's the rock scene like there?
Well, it's blossoming right now, really. There's all kinds of bands getting signed, lots of music coming out of the area. It's very alive right now, much more so than when we first got our record deal in 1983. It was a very different situation then. No place to play. Barely. I mean, we were the only band in the area that had a record deal aside from Heart, who had been signed years before us. And now the succession of record deals is pretty constant up there. I just think that, there's it's always been a very creative area, but I think record companies, were waiting for all the bands to come to them. And now that they're discovering that they don't really have to do that necessarily. It would be a tragedy if every band that wanted a record deal had to move to Los Angeles. People are writing more. I think one thing that some impact that we might have had on the local scene was as an example, showing bands that, you know, you can get a record deal and live in Seattle. It's possible. And you know, we did it just through writing our own material and recording, and I think there's been a great upsurge. There was an upsurge in that after we got our deal, bands focusing on writing their own material. We certainly wouldn't claim responsibility, you know, for any of the activity that's happening there. Now that's a result of, you know, those bands and their talents and things. But, you know, maybe if we could help open that door a little bit more into the area, then maybe we did.
Did you actually start as a cover band?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And was that hard to sort of, you know, because I know the sort of scene in that if you're a cover band,
Right.
you get gigs, you know, and if you do your own material, you don't.
Right.
So there's how did you overcome?
We didn't
that
do
step?
gigs.
Right.
Gigs being the determining factor there. If you do covers, you get gigs. If you don't get gigs. So we just didn't get gigs. That, you know, we said that wasn't the priority to get gigs. The priority was to get a record deal. And gigs doesn't necessarily equal record deal, but writing original material probably might have a little bit, you know, we didn't want to make records of other people's songs, so we just decided early on that we weren't going to play gigs, and we were just going to write. And we just kept our day jobs and, you know, spent all our money on this tape, and hoped that, you know, that tape would somehow get the attention of a record company. And fortunately it did.
What was your day job?
I worked in a hospital. I was, all the supplies that come in, I was sort of in charge of a storeroom, stocking all these things and, you know, keeping track of them, unloading deliveries and that sort of thing.
Your first brush with drugs.
Yes.
Good drugs. Yeah. So, and when you started playing guitar, who were your heroes?
Well, the first record that I ever had was a Beatles album, oddly enough. My grandparents bought me Sgt. Pepper, and I must say that they had incredible taste at that time, because I really grew up listening to the Beatles as a youngster. They were like my favorite band. And I think once I actually began playing guitar, it wasn't until I was about 13, and my older brother had quite a few Led Zeppelin albums around the house, and that's what I really locked into when I began playing guitar. That's what I wanted. That's the kind of stuff that interested me. I really loved Page's guitar work, so I launched right into like Houses of the Holy, I think was like the first album that I was trying to learn, you know, when I was playing guitar. And just from there, then, you know, it just opened the door to just so many different kinds of music, you know, Pink Floyd. Most of the things that I really liked, though, were either British or European bands initially starting out, with the exception of like Rush from Canada, or Aerosmith, you know, or Van Halen or something. But certainly more, you know, Jeff, our singer, most of us, you know, he's into Genesis and Yes, and we just kind of generally liked the music that was imported.
Right. Yeah, more difficult to get hold of stuff.
Yeah. It just seemed, I don't know, there was something to it that just grabbed us as kids. I really can't explain it. It was just, you know, I look at it now, analyzing it, and I think that there's a depth, you know, in a lot of cases. That sometimes there's, in American bands, there is a, Um, well, sometimes it's a bit shallower, I think. There's I'm not generalizing about all. There are certainly exceptions. There's a lot of great American bands, but I don't know. I just thought that, the stuff that Floyd talked about, on their records, the stuff that late era Beatles, is worldly sort of ideas, wasn't Babes. I love Babes, everyone that, but I don't think every song needs to be reduced to Cars and Babes, which, West Coast rock music for a great length had this sort of mentality that the tunes had to be about cars and babes. I don't know why.
That's all you can do on the West Coast.
There's lots of both.
Yeah, right. So, but even the bands you've mentioned, they took their influences from America anyway.
Well, it's all. I mean,
Yeah.
They took influence from America. We took influence from, it's all. Nobody is original. Everybody is just uniquely derivative. Hope to be is we're just a hodgepodge of all the influences that we've ever appreciated or liked, just kind of spun into what the five of us as a chemistry come up with. So
Yeah, one of the things about Queensryche has always been that the harmonies, that the special attention to vocals. Did you set out with that kind of intention?
Well, we've always, everyone very much appreciates melody. I think it's like all of us strive to have strong melody in the songs. As far as, vocal arrangements, I mean, it's just that sort of thing with harmonies and parts working together. That's just musical. It's nice when you have a part and you can support it with other parts around it that work together with it, So hopefully the whole piece is harmony, bass working against guitars, working against vocals. All of it is creating harmony, but, a lot of the vocal things, we're blessed with a capability like Jeff, who is a very... he's capable of a lot with his voice, and it opens up many doors, for us to be able to explore. It's very rare that we can, well, let's kind of take this approach. Jeff, he's capable of anything really that he wants to do with his voice. So that's nice that we're not working in limitations there either, because musically, we place no limits on us, and the fact that Jeff is constantly pushing with his voice to try new things with it, just makes for all the more interesting combinations, And this particular album, Eddie, our bass player, and myself sang a great deal of backups on. So we've been working, Jeff is the voice of the band, but, when we're in the studio doing things, in the past, he was generally doing the harmony work and everything. He was like doing most of the vocals, all of the vocals,
Yeah.
in the case of Operation Mindcrime. And this album, we decided to take a different approach where, Jeff is obviously singing all the lead stuff, but Eddie and I are actively, if there's a harmony part, it's not Jeff singing the harmony, it's me singing the harmony or Eddie singing the harmony. I even sing a little bit of lead vocal on one of the tracks. So, it improves us as a band to have more voices, and, Jeff's a great, inspiration as far as trying to learn that,
Yeah, I think it works. Yeah, definitely works. Having
most bands, if you have something that has a great ability, it just opens you. Live you can do all these things. You can do all these 4-part harmonies or something if you've got that many voices in the band that can sing, and sing well. So we're really trying to develop that. It's just going to make us a stronger band. Our live presentations will be, that much better. If you have a single singer and then, you lace your albums with all this stuff, and live nobody else can sing, it's pretty
Yeah, it's
pretty sad.
Disappointing live as well. I'm always impressed when, especially because a lot of bands don't give enough attention to live backing vocals, and just they don't think it's important.
Right.
But it is. It makes the whole thing.
Yeah.
Sound so much better.
Yeah.
No matter how good your lead singer is.
Right.
You can only do so much, as you said, without using backing tapes.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, how do you think Queensryche has evolved over the 7 years?
Well, I think we've become an unpredictable band, which is something that we've really strived for. And I don't think that we're a band that everyone knows exactly where we're going, sometimes even ourselves. I think that we're constantly redefining ourselves with each release. And I think maybe even we've been kind of stubborn as far as doing what we want and not really sort of maybe following the corporate road, which is fun, which is I think the best way, to do this is, when you write from the heart and people appreciate the things that you're doing, that's the best. When it's not, music is so factory churned out these days. There's formulas for everything, and Stock Aitken Waterman, they just churn out things. There's producing teams at home that do the same thing. Maurice Starr, who's churning out New Kids on the Block songs. And, the era of the 60s was such an exciting time, I think, musically, because the bands were making the music. I think what happened in the 80s, where the record companies were making the music or dictating the formats, as well as radio. Everyone's so desperate to fit into a format that everyone has to try to write a specific type of song. I think what happens is you step all over the creativity of the individual, and you get a hodgepodge of music that all sounds the same, and you don't get anything different. You have no variety. So, that being said, we have always just tried to write whatever it is that the five of us managed to create, and not try and chase around public taste, because it's a fruitless effort, and hope that what we do somehow will connect with people. And if it doesn't, then we walk away with our pride, at least. If you lie to yourself and write some record that you don't believe in but you think the public's gonna like, if it's not a commercial success, you've lost twice. So, but we work very hard on our stuff. There's a confidence in the band that that there is an audience out there for our music. It's just persistence, time, touring, making more records.